Most evergreen webinar funnels or passive funnels are dying. So I rebuilt mine. I ditched the evergreen model while still keeping 80% of it automated and went from a 1% conversion rate to a 10% conversion. So let's talk about why I did this, what I changed to fix mine, and even how much time it takes me each week to run it now. If you're new here, my name is Tara Wagner. I'm an accredited small business consultant helping service-based solopreneurs and tiny teams scale their businesses. So why are evergreen webinars failing? For years, evergreen webinars were kind of the epitome of passive income. And if you had a good one, you could see anything from a 2 to 5% conversion rate without really doing a thing. After you set it up, of course. This led a lot of course creators and coaches to chase that ultimate dream. Sales in your sleep, 10-hour work weeks, create it once, sell it forever, and let your team run the whole thing. But then came along this little trust recession where people got burned out by going to these fluffy webinars that were teaching them nothing, and by these coaches who were overcharging and completely inaccessible. They're off living the dream instead of taking care of their clients that they just sold to through this webinar. Not only that, but most webinars became a 20-minute intro, 5 minutes of teaching, and a 45-minute pitch. And so evergreen webinars became less and less profitable. This doesn't mean they don't work. People wouldn't still be doing them if that was the case. It just means that they don't convert as well as they used to, and the lead cost can be much higher, which results in overall lower returns. So how did I create a 10% webinar conversion rate on a high ticket offer, mind you? I did this with 3 things. First, I changed my webinar strategy to better speak to clients during this trust recession. And here's what this actually looks like. My webinar has about a 5-minute intro, but it's geared around the audience and what they want to know to be able to trust me and what I'm about to tell them, including storytelling from my past that encourages them to know that they can do this too. The teaching portion is about 30 to 40 minutes long, and it's broken into 3 parts. First are stats that they need to understand about small business. Then we go into mistakes to fix that I have seen at every income level and every season of business that they are actually being encouraged to make. And the third part of the teaching portion actually overlaps with the pitch by showing them what they need to do instead, but showing them through the lens of the methods that I teach. Because there is value throughout, I have a very high retention rate. Roughly 80% of attendees are still present by the time the pitch starts, and 30 to 60% are present by the time we get to the Q&A. The pitch is only about 10 to 15 minutes long, and I lead heavily with trust factors, both in the pitch and before it. I spent weeks gathering client wins that you can't fake, things like Trustpilot or video reviews, and I lace these throughout the webinar, not just at the end, so that I'm driving home the teaching points I'm making, not just driving home the pitch. But more than anything, to have a great webinar, you need a great topic that your audience resonates with. You need to know your audience. You need to understand their pain points, the mistakes they're falling for, the words they're using, the goals they have. And you need to have a solution they don't just need, but are actually willing to pay for. You can't scale one-to-many without that depth of experience. The second part of this fix, and especially in this AI-driven business world, I focused on the human experience. So while my competitors continue to make themselves inaccessible with passive funnels, I zagged. I decided to not just go with a live webinar funnel, I also opted to do the class on Zoom versus a webinar platform so that attendees could see other real people were there and could actually interact. I also added a live Q&A portion to the class where any question is on the table, whether it's about the webinar or something else, and I open up the chat to early attendees for Q&A before the class even begins so that we can build rapport and really connect. Also, before the class, I include two-way text messaging as well as encouraging questions or dialogue via email so that, again, we can build rapport and I can let them know that I'm not just some fly-by-night scammer. I'm a real person and I'm really here to support them. Some of this might not sound like a big deal, but it is one of the biggest factors in my ROI. People buy from people, especially people they know, like, and trust. I want to lead with a people-forward approach and build a people-forward business, especially in the age of AI, because that's how we stand apart when everyone else sounds like each other, by zagging when other people are zigging. Now, the third part of this fix was the tech. Even with a people-forward approach, you can still use automations and tech to your advantage, just not where it's going to diminish the client experience. So here's how my funnel looks today using my channel sponsor GoHighLevel. First of all, we run ads on Facebook and Instagram, and we promote the class on organic content and email marketing. All of this takes people to a landing page built on GoHighLevel, where again, I'm leading with the metrics that people want to see. So I'm talking about things like trust factors, like my Trustpilot rating and webinar reviews, and I'm including some curiosity-based bullet points. We actually have this page duplicated into 2 pages, one for cold ad traffic and one for warm organic traffic, so that we can gauge conversion rates of both. However, once somebody signs up on either page, they get either a cold or a warm tag in GoHighLevel, but they're sent through the same GoHighLevel automation. Now, when it comes to the automation, I will be honest, this is above my pay grade. I outsourced this build out to my ads manager who set all of this up, but what I'll do is walk you through a quick walkthrough of it. If you want a deeper dive into this automation, as well as the copy that I used for emails and text, be sure you're subscribed because I'm going to be dropping that video very soon. Now, during the webinar, as well as after, they are sent to a checkout page that was also built on GoHighLevel, and that has some testimonials built in that are mentioned in the webinar as well. This is not sexy, but it just goes to show you that it doesn't really have to be perfect for it to be powerful. When they make a purchase, GoHighLevel automatically connects with my course provider, Experientify. This sends them out their welcome email and then gets them into the program. However, GoHighLevel also has a course and membership features built in, so if I was starting from scratch, I would likely use those instead just to keep it simple. If you'd love to check out GoHighLevel for your own webinar or sales funnels, be sure to use my link in the description to double your free trial and get 30 days to test out the platform for yourself. And check out the video link there as well. It has a crash course on everything GoHighLevel can do for your business. Before I get into the stats, you need to know that I am selling what is considered a high-ticket product. This is my Breakthrough Boss program, which teaches solopreneurs how to build real businesses with things like business and marketing plans, operations and hiring skills, success habits and mindset, and a ton more. It sells for $15.97, more or less depending on payment plans and fast action discounts. And generally, high ticket items like this are very hard to sell via a webinar, live or not. Most marketers will tell you to stick with sales calls because conversion rates like mine shouldn't be possible. And to them I say, hold my water. So let's look at the stats from my Evergreen webinar before versus my live webinar now. Before I went to a live webinar funnel, my automated webinar sign-up page was converting really high at 60%. And because it was instant access, 90% of people were attending. But the average time in the webinar was only 10 minutes. The average completion rate was only 10%, and the average conversion rate, percentage of attendees who bought, was at 1.1 to 2%, but had dropped to 0.5%. After my rebuild, my live webinar sign-up page converts at just 30 to 35%. This is a significant drop, but likely because it's only available during one time slot because it's live and it's not instant access. And industry averages are only 20 to 30% anyway, so I'm pretty happy with this number. My attendance rate ranges between 30 and 40% depending on how many registrants came from cold ads versus a warm audience that week, as well as depending on the week, it just fluctuates. I don't have a way to compute average time in the webinar since we're using Zoom, but I do know that roughly 80% of people are still present when we start the pitch at about 45 minutes in. 60% are still present when we start the Q&A at about 55 to 60 minutes, and a whopping 30 to 40% are still hanging out when we wrap up, which varies, the time varies on this from an hour and 20 to an hour and 30, depending on how many questions we've had. 90% of my sales come in either during Q&A or in 1 to 3 hours after the class is over, likely because of the fast action bonuses that I offer. And my conversion rate, the number of sales from attendees, ranges from 8 to 18%, depending mostly on how warm the audience is, but most weeks with a very cold audience, it's still falling at the 10% mark. So even though some metrics dropped, others more than make up for it. But what about time spent? Most people want evergreen or passive funnels because they think a live sales funnel is going to take a lot more time, and it certainly can. But altogether, I spend 3 hours per week running mine. This is a little over 2 hours a week before, during, and after the class itself, and then less than an hour throughout the week replying to text messages and emails. My team spends about another hour helping with text and emails or admin throughout the week, and one of them is co-hosting on the Zoom with me to manage the chat, so that's about another 90 minutes there, for a total of about 3 hours for them as well. A few hours a week to go from the average 1 to 2% conversion rate to an 8 to 18% conversion rate. Yes, please. I could increase my conversions even more if I spent more time on follow-up, but I just can't right now. I do plan to add a salesperson to help out there soon though. Just remember, results like these happen over time, not overnight. There was more time spent creating the webinar, the automations, the emails, time spent tweaking things each week in the first few weeks to improve the metrics. So be realistic with yourself. Use videos like this as inspiration of what's possible for you, but not as a reason to beat yourself up if you're not there yet. We all have funnel flops before we get funnel wins. If you have questions, drop them below. I am an open book, and no, I don't have a course to sell on how to create a webinar, but if you'd like to dive deeper into the tech and the copy for my webinar automations, be sure you're subscribed, and don't forget to check out my sponsor, GoHighLevel. Next week, I'm gonna be diving into those pre-webinar automations that we built on GHL. Fist bump in the comments if you watched to the end. See you in the next one.